Hello and welcome to week 5 of your class and your final week of Google Sheets. This last week we're going to wrap up everything by focusing on creating pivot tables, making charts, graphs, and just generally making our data prettier and easier to understand. You'll notice that I've taken our movie spreadsheet and I've actually added the highest grossing movies and the lowest grossing movies and put them together. I've cleaned up the columns so that there are only 3 columns: the name, the total gross, and the release year. And I'm actually going to get rid of our lowest grossing spreadsheet. We don't need it anymore. So I'm going to click OK. And now I've got a somewhat large set of data. And I'd like to see if I can find some patterns in it to see if we can find out what makes a good movie year versus a bad movie year. In order to do that, I'm going to use a pivot table. Pivot tables sound intimidating, and they're a lot harder to explain than they are to show you how to do them. In fact, they're pretty simple to make, and they're really cool because they can really focus down your data into specific look-fors that help you see patterns, find trends, and really pinpoint things that your company needs to work on or your company is doing really, really well at. So I'm going to create a pivot table because I want to see if there are certain years that have really highly rated movies or a bunch of really lowly rated movies, or a combination of both, to see if there was one magic year for all of this. To do that, I'm going to select all my data. I'm going to click on my data tab and go to pivot table. Now, as you can see, this populates a whole new spreadsheet. If you look down here, next to our highest grossing movies tab, there's a new tab that says pivot table 2. It's empty right now because we haven't set up what we want to look at. Basically, a pivot table takes all of your data in a big spreadsheet, and you're only going to focus on a specific set. It's kind of like picking all of the M&Ms out of a bag of trail mix. You're getting exactly what you want. So over here in your report editor, you can change the range of the cells you're considering. Let's say you don't want to consider all the cells in your spreadsheet, and you can edit that down by clicking on Edit Range. Here, you're going to be able to build rows in your new table, columns, values, which are the cells that actually have the data in them, and then you can filter that data once you've built it. I'm going to click on Add Row, and as you can see, here are the 3 named columns that would have data below them, and then the rest of the spreadsheet. I'm going to click on Release Year, and as you can see, it's made a list of all of the years in which a movie was either the highest grossing or the lowest grossing of the year. But now I want to see if there's any years where there are multiple movies in a single year. I'm going to skip columns because right now all I need is this one set of data, and I'm going to go down to values. Now I'm going to do the release year again because that's what I'm considering. So now we have that same list. Well, that's not really telling me anything. It looks like it's adding it, which is kind of strange. So we're going to change this. Do you see here it says summarized by sum? So what it's doing is in some of these, it's actually adding across the year. We don't want that. So we're going to change the function in this to count. Now you can see that it's counting the number of movies in each year. That was whether it was higher or lower. So it looks like 1999, 2011, 2012, 2015, and 2016 had some pretty major either bombs or successes in the box office field. So let's see if we can narrow this down even further. Let's add a column, and let's add movie titles. So now you can see here, this is kind of almost a graph at this point of by year which movies happened during which year. Now this is kind of hard to read, so this isn't exactly perfect. Let's see now if we can filter one more. We're going to filter by release year, and we know we had some of those great years that had a ton of stuff, so we're going to click and get rid of any year that didn't have a bunch of movies. So our first one I think was 1999. It had 4 or 5 movies. 2011 was a good year, if I remember right. And what I'm doing when I'm deselecting and finding even more specific data, this is called a slice, which sounds kind of scary, but really you're just taking your data and focusing it down into the most granular level that you can. So I've sliced it down to 4 years, 1999, 2011, 2015, 2016. And now I've got a more readable graph. So it looks like it's kind of showing you where and what year, which movie was in what year. So let's take away our columns actually. Let's go back to just that count. So now you can see I've filtered it down to the top 4 years by count. So, and now we can see, oh, okay, 2015 had the most movies that either had high or low ranking. So you can see how you can get really, really specific in your look fors with your data. And that brings up an important point that if you are going to use a pivot table, know exactly what you're going to look for first and think through how you're going to find it. Because if you have tons and tons of data and you're going in blind and you don't know what you want to look for, you could end up with really useless data. But the nice thing again is, since you're working in Google Sheets, if you do happen to come up with useless data, then just use the undo button or go back in your revision history and start over. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a chart or a graph out of our data, and we're going to see visually what this looks like. Well, this, for me, we've got 4 years, and it's got 4 amounts. So we're not really comparing the amount of movies over time anymore. We're just looking at 4 exact snapshots in history. So this would be a perfect time to create a pie chart. So we are going to insert a chart. We're going to go to chart types. You'll see here they have recommendations. And this is because your computer thinks that you are trying to chart numbers of movies over time, but that's not really what we're trying to do. We're just trying to see who had the most movies. So we're going to come down here, and you've got 3 different choices of pie charts. You've got your traditional one, a histograph or a donut chart, and a 3D pie chart. The 3D pie chart's pretty cool looking, so we're going to use that. You can see here it's got a key, it's got a little legend, and then basically what it's doing here is it's trying to compare the numbers of movies against the grand total. So, or against all of the total movies. So 21%, oh, it's counting the grand total, that's why. So we're going to get rid of that grand total. Let's just highlight these 4 and get rid of this guy. Let's change our range. We're going to delete the chart. Try this one more time. Insert the chart. We're going to go to chart types. We're going to go to here. There we go. Now we see 4 years, 4 different sections of the pie, and this matches up. 2015 had the most, so that looks great. So now we've got this cool pie chart that we can use in a doc. We could use this in a Google Slides, which we'll be learning about next week. You can even publish the chart itself. So let's publish this chart. Right here you see it doesn't have a name because it's just a chart, but it has an interactive feature. You can either make it just a flat image on a web page or interactive. So let's see what interactive does. We're going to go here. Well, that's pretty cool. So see, it's got a little interactive feature, a little JavaScript thing. You can kind of highlight it. That'd be nice to use if you were using it in a presentation or in some sort of dashboard. That's a really nice feature. So let's stop publishing that. Now let's make a different chart. Let's go ahead and delete this guy, even though he's pretty cool. Or no, we can move him to his own sheet. There we go. He's got his own thing going now. Going back to our page though, let's delete this one and get this out of the way. Let's use our pivot table to now create a graph. It wanted to create a graph earlier. It recommended that, and I said no, but let's see what we got here. We're going to insert a graph, go to chart, and let's see if there's any sort of interesting graph we can use. Google has a ton of really cool graphs, like down here where they have gauges, they have bubbles, they have maps, but they won't let you use them if the data isn't relevant to that type of graph, which is also really nice because it saves you time wasted trying to find the perfect graph. It's going to let you know if you can use it or not. Let's go back to their suggested graph. I think that's fine. So we've got this. Now this isn't very interesting, but it does kind of show us that movies tended to spike up probably because, there's been the big glut of superhero movies coming out through Marvel, and those were huge budget films, and a lot of really bad films too. So we see that things were kind of going along pretty steadily. They had a huge jump in 2015, and now it kind of is starting to level off again in 2016. So this, chart isn't nearly as exciting as a pie chart. It's not as colorful, but it does definitely give us some decent information. The last thing I want to show you how to create is a note. Notes are just basically little sticky notes that you can put around your spreadsheets to kind of give an explanation or a justification for your data, or if you have a special insight about a specific cell or range of cells. So let's say over here I put a note for 47 Ronin, and I said this movie's gross was high, but its budget was higher. And so that's why, even though it grossed a lot of money, it was considered a flop, because its budget, which we took out of the spreadsheet, was somewhere in the 300 millions or something. You might even want to put a note here, insert note, and say these are all, you're going to select a range here and click insert note and say these are all the highest grossing movies. That way you can keep them separate. Now, why not just leave a column or leave a comment? The reason why is because if you were to do the same thing with a comment, the comments hide, first of all. But secondly, I can say, same thing, these are all the highest. And when I click comment, someone can come along and just delete that comment, and then it's not there anymore. You can delete notes as well, but these tend to pop out. They don't get deleted, they don't get edited. They can be protected along with a protected range. You can click there. You can format this to protect it. Let's do, I don't know, call it the 47 Ronin group. No one can, I'm going to leave it so nobody but me can change it, and now my note is protected there, so nobody can touch it. Comments aren't protected like that, so people can come through and add to them, delete them, edit them. So that's the nice thing about notes. So we've covered in this week, and you'll practice in your assignments, pivot tables, charts, graphs, and notes. If you have any questions about this week's assignment or this week's content, please check your G Suite documentation or ask your professor or your student advisor. Thanks. Have a great week.